Now that's a parking spot.
Introducing the I may have underestimated the size of my car policy with accident forgiveness from American Family Insurance. Insure carefully. Dream fearlessly. Get a quote. Find an agent. Visit amfam.com.
Optional policy features not included in base policies. Review policy for coverages and exclusions. American Family Mutual Insurance Company SI and its operating company 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Welcome to Audiogyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Chirodeep Chaudhuri with us on Audiogyan. In the last 2 decades, he has worn multiple hats, from being an author, a journalist, to being a photographer. Chirodeep's works largely documents the urban landscape, and he's often been referred to as the chronicler of Bombay. During his career, he has produced diverse documents of his home city in the range of projects documenting its architectural and social landscape. I stumbled upon him and his work first time at Join Paperplanes session in Mumbai. We'll try and document today Chirodeep's philosophy and importance of having story behind every photograph. So thank you, Chirodeep, for giving your time, and it's
pleasure.
It's a real honor to have you on Audiogyan.
Thank you so much.
Cool. So as I mentioned, I wanted to just understand your philosophy and primarily the photography angle of your work. And I've come up with few questions. So let's see.
Shoot.
Yeah. So what aspect, according to you, is one needs to follow or understand or observe for following a particular photographer? So to understand his thought process, and how do you... So this is what we were speaking offline as well, right? So there are these artists where you follow a particular artist, you follow his work, his or her work over a period of years. Same happens with musicians, with directors, film directors.
Sure.
So as a photographer, if I'm interested in photography and I want to follow a particular photographer, so what's the thread one can follow? And how do you perceive also a photograph without any context? So
it's I'm not sure if there is one definitive way of doing this.
Okay? Yeah, so multiple parameters.
For instance, your question kind of took me back to many years to kind of when I was starting out in photography, which essentially what it means is you had no context, right? I mean, you just had an interest in photography, you had a desire to become a photographer, however idiotic it may have sounded then. But I remember kind of stumbling upon a copy of Life magazine, okay? A magazine that I had never heard of, I'd never seen, obviously. And the first thing that it did for me, and I'm saying this on hindsight, is that I think it had me mesmerized. I mean, there were photographs there which kind of drew me in, I think, simply on its aesthetic power, okay? So I'm assuming that's the first thing that happens to people, okay? You probably have never heard of any of those names as to who are these photographers, okay? So you will not be able to recognize work or anything, okay? You're just responding to the image in the beginning. And then I think what started happening in my case is I started going back to Flora Fountain, those pavement bookstalls that we had in Bombay in those days, and trying to hunt out more magazines. And I kept finding more magazines. In those days, you could find lots of old issues of Life magazine. And I think a sort of an education began. And that education really was, so you're suddenly saying, for instance, I remember finding an issue which was like a special issue, like say 50 years of Life magazine or whatever. Okay. And so suddenly you are seeing work there, okay, which is obviously not contemporary work, but you are seeing work, you say, okay, there was something called as a daguerreotype. Okay. You read the caption, you suddenly a few pages later, you are hearing about somebody you're reading about somebody who's probably somebody like say a Cartier Bresson who's talking about say street photography. Okay, now suddenly in that one issue, okay, I suddenly say spot 4 or 5 images which have now caught my attention. Okay. Now, out of these 4, 5, now I might say, okay, now I'm going to be chasing those names. Okay. Now I'm chasing, when I'm looking for other issues of the magazine or I'm finding other books now, I'm saying, oh, Cartier Bresson is a name. Now that's context. Right. Now I'm looking, and I think your education really begins there. Okay. And I'm saying in an informed, because there is no formal education here. Right. So it's not that I'm going to college and they're teaching me how to see photograph. I'm kind of teaching myself. I'm kind of looking at a Cartier Bresson photo and I'm teaching myself, okay, this is a way of seeing. This is how Bresson saw. I'm beginning to read about Bresson. Okay. I'm just as much as I'm beginning to kind of say, read about other photographers. And slowly, I think the context. So you are beginning to realize why is, say, a Cartier Bresson's work different from, say, a Walker Evans's work, and why is Walker Evans different from, say, a W. Eugene Smith, and things like that. But I'm saying this is I think a slow process, right? Like any education, this is a slow process, and I think it really comes down to how immersive. How immersed you get in this process of educating yourself. Okay, if you are not a dedicated student, I mean, obviously your education will lack. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So if you are really going deep, then I guess there is a certain kind of education that you are giving yourself. If you are willing to keep it flippant and stuff, then obviously you're not going to be, for you, then it kind of just say sticks to pure aesthetic appreciation alone and nothing more, But I think also what happens is, I think slowly in the process, and this is also about not just about seeing photographs, but also about reading. And by reading, what I'm saying here is it's about not just, say, picking up a book on, like, say, a monograph on the work of a photographer, but also about reading about his work, which other people have written about, academic books. I mean, whatever. I mean, criticism, all kinds. Because slowly it starts
understanding the thought process of that.
Exactly. His worldview. And I think eventually that's what kind of, those become the parameters that are kind of distinguishing. Okay. Like, the way, like, say, Eugene Smith saw the world. I mean, his angst, his whatever, I mean, about the world and things like that led him to doing a certain kind of stories. Okay. Like, say, the country doctor, nurse midwife, the Pittsburgh Project, all of it, I mean, is something which, say, for instance, Bresson wouldn't have been doing. Okay. Or Eugene Smith is not going to be wandering around with a camera around India the way, say, Bresson was doing. They're chasing two different things. Their worldviews are different. And I think you slowly will start realizing that. Because otherwise, net, say, when I'm opening that issue of 50 years of photography, I'm reacting to everything at an aesthetic level and saying, "Arey wow, they're all nice." I'm not making a distinction beyond that. The worldview is not kind of coming across to me immediately. So I think this is the way that it really works. I mean, similar thing happened when I was working on my book Village in Bengal. I had very little notion of what rural Bengal was. And I remember starting to watch Satyajit Ray's Pother Panchali, and then beginning to read around, so which kind of informed me about Ray, about his cinema, about, the way he saw the world, about his typography, about various other things around about him. But the interesting thing that it also did was it took me to the work of Hitchcock. It took me to the work of Kurosawa. and the education suddenly kind of
Correct.
broadened, you started to kind of realize, okay, what's the difference in the way Kurosawa saw the world and what's the difference in the way
Hitchcock
saw the world and the way Ray saw the world.
Or Godard for that matter.
Exactly, right? I mean, they were, I think, in generally compassionate towards the world. I mean, they had I think ideologically they all may have been of a similar kind, but I think the aesthetic parameters kind of then you started to, to look at and now beginning to distinguish one from the other. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is a slow process. I mean, and in many ways, I don't think it's very different vis-a-vis like any of the other arts, like say you were talking about music. I mean, you were talking about films. I mean, I think all of these, I think coupled with all of this is also, I think, our sense of the world. You know what I'm saying? Because I would react to a Ray, or I would react to, say, a Godard or whatever. I mean, depending on my own sensibilities as well. So, if it is completely off, then I may not react to that. I may react to something else.
Or just the visual appeal.
Or just the visual, So I think that these are slow processes. But in many ways, I think similar across the board with most arts. So
if I can add to that, and you can correct me. So, I completely get where you're coming from, and because that's the way even Audiogyan artists have been evolving.
Right.
Of just reaching out to someone, and then their interview, they mentioning someone, and then you keep digging deeper into finding more people as well. So is this a good start that I look at a photograph without any context, because I am a layman, and say it could be a very aesthetically good looking photo, but a very regular photo, like just like two crows there, right? Or in your case, like the two dogs are sitting there. So that's it. So if you look at it, it's visually good, but it's a very basic thing, right? As a layman, right? Now I read the description which you have given there, or maybe just the title. And if the title says friends or freedom or whatever, then is that a good starting point for me to understand that what freedom means to you? It could be as trivial as two similar looking dogs sitting, as opposed to like whatever. Like, I don't know. It's just a
so one of the things that I keep noticing nowadays in a lot of photography is that also I think there is a lot of pressure to be very profound. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
One doesn't need to be. I'm saying, like, there could be an occasion where you are just confronted by maybe a kind of genuinely kind of lovely scene, and maybe you just want to photograph it for the sake of it being lovely. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Nice.
I don't see that there is a problem in it necessarily. I don't think I need to infuse any amount of profundity to it.
So, subtext ya kuch bhi chahiye.
There need not be, I'm saying. I'm saying now, if it kind of is coming through in an organic manner, then sure. You know what I'm saying? But I think there need not be a pressure that, there are, for instance, certain Instagram handles that I look at. For instance, they're kind of just plain and simple, very well shot photographs. I mean, the problem is that Instagram has too many of these, handles where all that there is a pretty picture and nothing more. Okay. So I think it really needs to be a combination of two things. But at the same time, I don't think I should put any pressure on myself to say ki, I've shot a picture of two dogs, sitting on Marine Drive, maybe curled up as mirror images of each other. Now kind of, do I need to, or say maybe not curled up as mirror images, but as opposites? Do I need to have a caption like saying yin yang? I mean, why do I need to do that? Do you know what I mean? I mean, let it be just a pretty picture of, and maybe people will find their own thing to it. I mean, some people may like it, some people may not like it. maybe if I'm saying yin yang, maybe now certain other people start attaching a certain value to it and now like it. I'm saying those are, again, I think it would really depend on the photographer as to how he wants to put his work out there. I kind of personally am not a very big fan of, this sort of unnecessary profoundness. I would much rather try and arrive at some genuine story gradually, by keep digging, rather than do this sort of superficial.
No, the point was actually to just start associating, because one of my friends, he's like a amateur painter,
Right.
And for me, whatever work he does is like really nice. So he paints something, and in the initial days when I was even like learning or understanding, I just asked him कि ये painting क्या है, इसका मतलब क्या है, right? And he said, boss, मतलब बितलब मत पूछ, right? Is it okay
Correct.
looking? Would you like to have it in your house? That's about it. It's like, it's a nice composition, like good colors. But if you're really interested, then you get into the details of it. कि क्या उसका.
So I think,
Not everyone is supposed to understand, right?
yeah, I'm saying it doesn't matter if we don't have to make sense of everything in the world. It could be that, I'm probably a little stupid on occasions, you know what I mean? Maybe there are certain things which I'm not understanding, which I think is fair enough. I don't think I need to kind of flagellate myself because I didn't understand somebody. Or I don't think that, the artist needs to call me names and say, Arey, you don't understand this. Useless. I don't think that is needed either. And having said that, I think we must also realize that the business that we are in is a business of communication. Okay. So now I'm saying at the end of the day, that's my goal. Right? Now, whether I'm trying to communicate something profound, whether it's something very straightforward, is it something which requires excessive effort on my side to make the point? Is it a point that is getting made very simply? These are, so these I think, can be left to the photographer. And I'm saying, as an audience, I think one I think will be able to judge the success of the photographer's work in a certain way, and having said that, I think in any communication, it's a two-way thing. It's not that because I didn't get it that the photographer doesn't know his job. It's not that either. So I think it's a two-way process. And I think we should kind of not pressurize ourselves in kind of trying to, but this is a very common thing that I keep seeing. There's an interesting thing that happened. There's a Facebook page that I keep seeing called it's a street photography collective. And they come up with, I think, whatever it is, monthly or jobi, they have a theme. Okay, like the last one that I was seeing was eye contact. Or something could be like, like say freedom or whatever. Some word like that. And the photographers who are part of that group start putting in photographs that they think communicate that word. Okay. So if it's freedom, then, what do you think, how you perceive freedom, how I perceive freedom? Could your picture be like, one white pigeon flying in, is it that? My thing could be something else. Who knows? I'm just saying. Now, you see something like that. There are some which are very, very well done, very smart and, things like that. Whereas there are others which are like really trite. And you say, oh my God, like saying, that freedom hai to like, do safed kabutar, you say like, God, give me a break. So you see, this is what I'm trying to say.
No need to.
So I think obviously we have to be aware of, what's a smart way of doing things, Do I obviously always need to state it? Maybe sometimes I don't, and by not doing, people get it, they don't get it. I mean,
I think this could be one of the reasons, like a lot of paintings, the painters itself say untitled, yeah, just leave it. Like, whatever. Cool. So coming to the photography side of it, as in like this was like from a main layman's perspective, this is towards the photography. So in one of your interviews, you have given a tip, understand why you are shooting. Right? That was the quote. So does it always have to be like that then? And sometimes you shoot and then build a story. Sometimes you have a story and then you shoot. So if you can just explain that part of it. And also, if we can take the Bombay clock project example to illustrate your thought process.
The Bombay clocks, I'm not sure if that would be the right example. I'll tell you why. Because, it was one of the first projects that I ever started. Okay. So if I tell people that, I had an idea in my head and I started, I think I would be lying through my teeth, because I had no idea what I was doing, and it's taken me 23 years and I'm still looking and I'm still finding clocks. Okay. So I think there are various ways. I mean, like, for instance, say, this is my way of working, and I'm not saying that this has to be everybody's way of working or whatever. I'm saying this is what works for me. This is what has given me results. It's kind of, I'm comfortable with this, which is, I very rarely, start shooting something if I don't have a sort of clear idea in my head. Okay. Now, for instance, like, let's look at a project like, say, Commuters. Okay. Now, Commuters, I mean, is, if you see the book, okay, which is a tiny 4-inch by 6-inch book, Commuters, I mean, it's really like a collection of about 99 mugshots of people, of strange, ordinary looking men. Okay. And the way the project really came about was, one was trying to grapple with the question, how does one photograph a city? Okay. What would be the kind of things that you would want it to kind of touch upon, and one of those, because I mean, all cities are complex, right? I mean, so I remember at one point telling myself, one of the aspects of Bombay as a city is work. Okay. So this needs to be communicated somehow in the picture. And I remember at one point, kind of probably very weeks of lazy thinking, and you're saying, oh, does it need to be pictures of people at work? And then you're telling yourself, but what does people at work mean? I mean, my neighbor is going to work. I mean, he comes down the staircase with his briefcase and he's going to work. I mean, so do you photograph that? Or do you photograph Kohli woman kind of carrying a basket of fish? What is it that you're photographing? I mean, is it like a film shooting in progress? Or is it like a cameraman specifically? So is this work showing different activities? Is that interesting? Now, ye karte, I remember landing up this book at home, which was Sebastião Salgado's book called Workers. It's a path-breaking project, iconic work of photography. I think what it told me is that if you want to photograph work as an activity, that's what it really should be. That's the benchmark. Okay. So what I was thinking is not good enough. So it went out. I'm saying it's also important to know what is not a good idea. Right? So I think it, for instance, told me, no, this is not going to work. Bad idea, chuck it, move on. Keep thinking more. Various things happening. I remember a friend of mine, myself, we kind of had traveled to Cambodia. I was very interested to see S21 in Cambodia, which is, this government school building where a lot of people had been tortured during the rule of the Khmer guys. Uh, it's quite a shocking place to be in, because you walk from one room to the other, and it's just wall after wall after wall, just plastered with black and white mugshots of all the people, or of many of the people who had been held there and then tortured and eventually murdered. Okay, what that told me suddenly, because I was also grappling with the idea, then I suddenly got very interested in the idea of the mugshot. Okay, and suddenly here I am in this room faced with photographs which are essentially mugshots. And it kind of suddenly told me that mugshots can hold your attention. Okay? Because I'm not just looking at it as an aesthetic anymore, but as in, what is that mugshot communicating? You know what I'm talking about? So similarly, I mean, various things are churning in the head. Okay? Various other things happening. I'm not going into all that. But, and then one fine day, I'm in the train. I was on a 2-year break at that point, and I'd resumed work again, and I was back to being a commuter. And there I am in the train, and really like a bolt out of the blue, you're saying, oh my God, I mean, all these people sitting around me, these are my subjects. I mean, and the train compartment suddenly became the stage, because it's the greatest stage in Bombay where the drama of its daily life gets played out, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly you're saying each of these faces, each of these people is a tiny part of the Bombay city story, right? So I'm saying it's a philosophical way of looking at it. And so that's how was the beginning of the project. So the thing is, one hadn't started shooting, but one had been thinking about this for almost a year. Okay. Then for a couple of weeks, you started taking baby steps. You started taking pictures, and you're trying to form the project. Okay. So you're saying, okay, I'm sitting here. This guy has come and he sat in front of me. Let me try and do a mugshot of him. You're slowly beginning to figure what could be the problem. Would he notice you, and would he say, hey boss, shoot nahi karne ka? Is light a problem? In a moving train, is it a problem? You suddenly start realizing other problems, right? Most people, wear light colored shirts and they're dark skinned. Is there a technical problem that you will face while you're shooting, of exposure? So it took me about, I think, 15 days, 3 weeks, or maybe a month, where I'm trying out various things. Okay. What should the frame be? If I'm doing mugshots, mugshots in Cambodia at S21 is one thing, but here is it working? So I remember in that 1 month, I must have done some 20-30 pictures, made prints, trying out various things to see is it going anywhere. And then I think I eventually figured like, okay, I think this is the way to go about it. So I think one is always, one is carrying an idea in one's head. Okay, this idea of how do I photograph a city is something that one has been grappling with for many, many, many years. Okay, while doing other projects, while conversing with friends who are probably dealing with it in their own way, as a writer, as a painter, as God knows, a poet or whatever. So you are also dealing with it. But maybe the trigger iske pehle tak nahi hua tha aapko. Maybe something was a trigger today and you start thinking about it and the idea starts working. Like for instance, if I hadn't resumed my job, I don't think I would have been a commuter then. So maybe that was the trigger. But you see, you were working on this for 1.5 years. In your mind, you were carrying this problem. Okay, it's also it always is an exercise in problem solving, right? So you're saying, how do I solve this problem? Now, there are various ways in which this problem can be tackled. I'm saying this is the the way that I chose it.
Correct.
So what was interesting was that, when 3 years later, when it was being exhibited, I started discovering photographers around the world, some very well-known names, some names whom I'd never heard of, and there in the middle of it all was Chirodeep. There's been a tradition of photographing commuters, so without knowing each other, I mean, somebody in New York, somebody in Paris, somebody in Tokyo. I mean, so I have about 8 or 9 of these books at home, which is on the theme of commuters. And it's fascinating to see how in some way our approaches, and that's what I'm saying, without knowing each other,
Correct.
Are similar or are dissimilar. The reasons of why we were photographing, like, Walker Evans was photographing commuters in the New York subway for a different reason than, say, Chirodeep was. The way, this guy was photographing commuters in the Tokyo subway, all kind of crushed to the glass window panes and stuff, was very different, but we were all photographing our commutes in the city. So I think it becomes important to at least have some focus as to what are you chasing. And it might be a matter of time before you actually hit on the
trigger.
Yeah, the trigger. And like, for instance, one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm photographing abandoned helmets on the streets of Bombay. Okay. I have a basic thought about why these helmets interest me. Okay. But I'm not sure. I've done about close to about 50 pictures, which have sort of made the final cut as of now. I have a basic thought about why this project is growing in me right now. Why, for instance, helmetless travel, or the condition of roads, road safety. These are things which I think concern me or have bothered me for a couple of years now. Okay. Now, whether the abandoned helmets is the way to kind of look at those concerns, I'm not sure as of now. It's seeming right now. Tomorrow it may not. 6 months later it may not. But I'm saying this is a process. So
I remember when, like, I was in college, or maybe just pass out of the college, and
right.
National Geographic had put out a photography competition, and what does that yellow rectangle mean to you? Right. So what does, not even rectangle, it was just what does yellow mean to you? And I'd been thinking about this for some time. It was like a tight deadline. Obviously, I had like FM10 that time, Nikon ka basic, and I started shooting everything yellow, and then there's a pattern which emerged, and I found out that, hey, all yellow is public. Right. So your number plates yellow are public.
Right.
Your phone booth STD, ISD things are yellow, and those are public. Your rickshaws are yellow, and so on and so forth. And then I just shot some 50 yellow things, and and I just send it. And I think obviously it was nowhere. I'm sure it must be nowhere in the at least a crore entries also in terms of the output which I had created. But the first one who won also had the same theme. It was public, because this guy was, it was very well shot. It was blur. The guy was jumping into a metro. And the metro had everything yellow around it.
Okay.
So I assume that metro is again a public way of transport.
Right.
So yeah, there are these dots when you connect back.
Correct.
And then
Correct.
there are,
And I'm saying, these are, again, one, I think, has to understand that this is a process. I can tell you, like, I started shooting the helmets today. But I know for a fact that, the germ of the idea is many, many years back. For instance, I know when I first started noticing the helmets, okay, I've kind of written about it as part of that project. I mean, which is when I saw, an accident on the Eastern Express Highway, and somebody kind of, took the helmet off that guy's head and he kept it on the side of the highway, and then for almost the next maybe 2 weeks, every time that I was in an auto going by, I would see the helmet kind of sitting there on the side of the road, Obviously, at that point, I was doing nothing about it, but the trigger happened now. So,
cool. So, if we can also pick up the Imperial Towers project. So, how did that story begin in your head? Or, if you have already touched upon it, but if you want to summarize, or does the story retrofit in it? Or
so sometimes, but I'm saying it's rare. In my case, it's rare. Meaning, I might,
no,
funny.
But sorry to interrupt.
No
but
problem.
There could be 1,000 ways. Acha, that's what you said, that this is my way of expressing it.
In a way, but also the point is that I've probably been thinking about, I've probably also eliminated other options. I mean, and in the process of elimination, in the process of trial and error, okay, you are trying to, make your way to the meaty part. You know what I'm saying? So, one of the reasons why I like to work in this very slow sort of way is because, in this sort of, jaldi mein, I don't think I can reach the meaty part, So I think I like to keep burrowing in slowly, So I'm always working on, like, say, 3-4 things, at least in my head, okay? Like, for instance, I remember there was suddenly a period about 10-15 days when I was photographing these helmets like nobody's business, So from like about, I think 12 or 13 images, it straight went to 40, meaning it was fabulously productive and fertile period, right? Now it's been about, I think, close to about a month and a half that I have not photographed any. Okay, I haven't even been spotting them. I mean, forget photographing them, So the thing is, but now there is something else. Another project which was parallelly going on, which has suddenly taken over my mind. So I'm saying these are things that you're doing simultaneously. I don't think you forget any, or maybe, so
but then how do you bring closure? Because it's an endless journey. I would like to quote a very cliche.
So I think, one of the things about closure, so for instance, I mean, I think one is, I think you intuitively know when it's over. Okay, one is that. I mean, I don't want to sound vague and all, but I'm saying it is a slightly intuitive thing. It also, I think, depends on the kind of project that you're doing. Like, say, for instance, if I'm looking at something like, say, a village in Bengal, which had a kind of more linear sort of narrative, which is the story of my ancestral village, as opposed to, say, a collection of photographs of coin-operated payphones, okay, or different views of the Imperial Tower from different parts of the city, which is then, as you said, it's open-ended, right? I mean, then why are you stopping at 50? Why not take it to 55? Or why didn't you stop at 45? I mean, sure, so which is where I think also the whole editing thing is coming in. So you say, okay, chalo, okay, I think I've been looking at helmets now, chalo, for 3 saal se shoot kar raha hu. Ab chalo, I think it's over. Okay, and I also do my edits like on a regular basis. So it's not that I'm accumulating images and then saying, okay, chalo, ab baithte hain edit karne. It is not that. So if I've shot a picture today, I'm already beginning to think, okay, where is it going? If there are already 40 images, I saw a picture on my way here, and I'm saying if I'm shooting it, I'm already telling myself, where does it fit in? So I think this is a constant process. So I think, and again, I'm saying, because we are talking communication, therefore you're also thinking audience, you're also thinking viewer. So you're constantly thinking am I testing the patience of the viewer? Okay, I might say, Chirodeep, you're damn good. There are 50 photos you have produced. Am I testing the patience of my audience? Is this an idea which requires 30 pictures? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a balance. It's a constant tug of war which you're doing, trying to say, okay, is it time to now end it? At the same time, one shouldn't only be thinking audience, because you might say, no, I think there's still some work needs to be done. So I'm saying it's a very fine, these are signals which you have to be kind of very sharp to be able to pick up. It's very easy to get self-indulgent. One also, I think, needs to be able to say, okay, like the clocks project, one of my worries is, I think it's over. I think I've gone deep down into the reserves of patience in doing it. 23 years. Okay. My little fear is that when the show happens, when the book happens, which is hopefully in the coming year, that somebody will stand up and say, boss, you forgot one more clock. You missed one clock or something like that. I've now come to terms and I'm telling myself, okay, maaf karo, ek miss ho gaya, can't help it. 23 years I've looked. If I haven't found you, too bad. So I think there are various ways in which you decide, when do I stop an idea? But I think at the end of the day, you look at the work and you say, do you really think it's over? I mean, so do you think the audience would be happy, or satisfied that it's over or whatever, so. Yeah.
So good that you brought patience as a keyword into, because that's my last and concluding question as well. And before that, I want to just highlight one cliche dialogue which I've heard in one of the films ki, जब सोच गहरी हो तो फैसले कमजोर हो जाते हैं, right? So patience as a keyword, like what's your definition? Because 23 years just working on one, obviously you must be working on multiple things at the same time, but still having that perseverance to just keep looking for more. So like what is your thought about patience in general? Because photography needs patience. At least my understanding or my exposure towards patience in photography is when it comes to, say, wildlife photography. You sit
exactly.
for hours
I was just about to say. So you see, the thing is, people, I think, usually use that as an analogy, which is, I think, a good analogy, right? I mean, which is also an easy analogy, which is like saying, oh, the guy has been sitting on a machan for like 4 hours waiting for, a tiger to come and drink water or whatever, which requires obviously tremendous patience and all that. But I think all photography requires patience. It's just difficult this to quantify. For instance, and again, like I'm saying, it's a relative sort of thing, right? I'm standing outside at a street corner. And I'm telling myself, okay, I'm waiting for a certain picture. Okay, I want...
like a simple, guys say smoking and a aeroplane is passing from...
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, maybe that's what I'm waiting for, Now, maybe I know कि like अगर आप सुबह 9 बजे अगर आप खड़े हो गए यहाँ पे, let's assume that there are more flights at that time. Okay? Maybe you're aware that this guy comes and waits here for an auto at this time. Now, if you know all this, maybe your wait is not going to be too much. But I'm saying you have been chasing this idea in your head for a while. Now, that is patience as well. It doesn't necessarily have to mean, oh, are you standing on the side of the road for 1 hour?
But then what is the difference between staging it? You can stage it as well, right?
Well, I mean, so I guess it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I mean, I'm saying I wouldn't stage an image if it becomes misrepresentation. Okay? Like I'm saying, say if you are not a smoker and I make you stand and I say, okay, stand here and smoke. Am I using you just as a model? In which case it's fine. Or am I trying to make a point about some, so I think...
but does that happen at that nuanced level that yes, he's not an actor or she's not an actor, but
Well, see, the thing is, when I'm doing street foot, when somebody's shooting on the street, you don't want to kind of generally mess around, right? I mean, now, sure, you could probably, if you're, say, doing a portrait of a shopkeeper or something, let's assume, you're telling him, bhai, आप थोड़ा सा ऐसा left पे ऐसा lean करो ना. That's okay. I mean, in a way, but you're not saying ki, this guy doesn't have an interesting face. Let me get the next shopkeeper to come and sit in his. Then that's a little silly, is what I'm saying. I think those are extreme. We don't need to go to that extreme. But I think patience, I'll tell you, in case of my work, I also don't want to fetishize it by saying that, I like to do these very long projects. It's one of those terms which get thrown about a lot these days in photography, which is long-term project. Okay. It doesn't mean that if you are engaging with something for a very long time, that it necessarily will be good. Okay. Just as much as it doesn't mean that because you're shooting something for 2 days, that you're not doing it well. It's neither of these, right? And this is coming from the fact that, say, as a photojournalist, very often I would be sent on an assignment. Let's assume, say, I've been sent to photograph the Pushkar Mela and I've been told 3 din ka assignment. I have to produce a good story in 3 days. I don't have to dedicate my life to photographing Pushkar Mela, right? And then do it well. So I'm saying, so it kind of in many ways links to your earlier question. Do you need to know things? What is it that you need to know? You need to do some amount of basic study about what you're going to shoot. Now, say if it is my own project, then I can take my research to whatever absurd level I want to, right? I mean, but if I'm being commissioned to photograph something, then I do my research so that in 3 days I'm able to pull the job out from there, right? So I think patience is an important factor for all photography. The kind of work that I like to do on my own, I usually start from a point where I'm telling myself, boss, you don't know anything about this subject. So which then means that everything is a learning, right? And that learning, when you think I don't think I can absorb anything else about the subject, or my interest is waning, or maybe I know enough, or this is the limit of what I want to know. That's when you kind of probably start calling an end to the project. I mean, it's also, and I think that is what kind of requires the patience, right? Because otherwise, how do you do these projects, right? Like, for instance, today when I look at the list of 80 buildings of clocks, I say, well, in a way I could have finished it in a month.
Correct. Yeah.
But the thing is, there was no list. No one knew about these buildings. Okay, so the list that you see now...
but you dedicate, say, 6 months or a quarter and just say that I'm just going to, from Sion to Colaba end, I'm just going to roam around one street one day.
So now that's what I'm saying. So I think, and I think this is the beauty of a project like this. I remember when, in 1996, when I started doing it, and in 99, when this work was first shown, I had about some 16, 17 pictures which were shown. I thought that was the project, right? Because how do you know that there are more than 16 buildings? There was no way of knowing. Okay. You didn't think that there is so much to know about it.
You didn't think it's something to talk about also.
Exactly, right? I mean, you thought you're a young guy, you're in a hurry for most things in your life at that point. You say, chalo, one project down, ek utar diya, chalo abhi. Now, the thing is, but then you start discovering. Now, you could very easily say, chalo, bas ho gaya. Exhibition ho gaya, chhod do, now let's keep moving, But, I don't think I kind of have that bone in me which says, chalo, let's drop it and move. I like to linger on things. I'm a collector in many ways, like I collect Gandhi figurines. I mean, I collect clocks, public clocks. I collect, so I think it's also that collector instinct, ढूंढते जाओ, be on a hunt, be it helmets, be it clocks, be it Gandhi figurines. So I think that's the patience. I think, I like to believe it's a natural trait in me. I can't help it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm done with, obviously there's like a lot more to be understood about photography also. And yeah, I'm planning to do a series of episodes with few other photographers as well. But yeah, I'm thinking of having this common question in the end to everyone, is that with Instagram, with 3 cameras in the phone, with like mobile phones going heavily on cameras, like, have you been pondering about what's the future like and of photography? Is it going to be profound? Every image has to be profound. Is it going to be just time pass?
Of course, I mean, I think photography has seen this sort of kind of this tremendous shift. Okay. Now, I think that there is a philosophical way of looking at it, and I think there is, a sort of more rational way of look. I think couple of things. I mean, one is, the job of technology is, I think, to democratize. Okay. So when 35mm cameras came in, way back, a lot of people got into photography just because it became more accessible. So everybody didn't have to lug big field cameras. So now similarly, like, with it on your mobile, I mean, there are lots more people who are taking pictures. Okay. So who's the guy who's losing out? The guy who's losing out, for instance, if you talk to the guys at the Gateway of India, the guys who take tourist photos, you should hear them. They tell you, there are lots of people, how it has affected their business. Okay. Of course, it has also affected our business, say, as professional photographers, because I think it has sort of devalued the skill to some extent. Okay, so I think clients kind of are a little cocky when they talk, this completely ridiculous way. Now, having said all of this, I mean, also the point is that, which I often keep telling, having this discussion with friends, which is, so you say you stay in a certain neighborhood, okay, and you have a great cake shop, okay, and in your housing colony, your mother, your sister, your neighbors, a lot of ladies have bought, say, a home oven. Okay, does the baker kind of start saying, oh my God, mera to business choppat ho gaya? I don't think he kind of thinks that, because I think partly he's telling himself that, no, I think I have a certain skill set, okay, and I have to trust my skill set. Now, sure, my mother bakes a cake and I will say, no, mommy, it's damn good. My dad will say, no, it's really nice. But my mother is not going to be baking every day. The neighborhood baker is the guy who's going to be baking every day. Right? Now, sure, it might so happen that my mother decides ki, okay, chalo, I will bake on a whim. He probably has lost one customer thoda bahut. But he hasn't lost the neighborhood, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. So to me, very often, I think the fear is a little over the top. Okay. I still have to go out and produce the picture. Okay. वो आपके हाथ में मोबाइल हो या कुछ भी हो, I will still, if you come to me, I will still have to go out and produce the picture. It's, of course, it's become a little difficult. I mean, let's not fool ourselves about it.
No,
what like has I think changed? Sorry, one more. I think what has changed is that I think everybody has an opinion on photography. Okay, meaning, my sister could show me a picture and say, "Arey, wo isme kya kharab hai?" I think that's a stupid sort of statement. Because everybody thinks just because they have been empowered that they can do it well. I don't think, and I think that kind of changes things, because like, for instance, a lot of editors in publications are now beginning, I think the whole economy of the way the photography thing is working, that has changed. And I think, so people are beginning to say, like say a lot of websites, they say, oh, I'm not going to be hiring a photographer, but I'll send the reporter out with an iPhone, jaake aap shoot kar lo. Now, what it is doing is the audience is getting used to a lousy photograph. To me, that is an inarticulate archive that is being created.
Correct. That's what I was
coming. And I think that's the problem. To me, that's in the long run, that's the problem. So I think that's a little dispiriting. I mean, because 50 years later, what's the archive that you have? I mean, of unskilled people going out and doing random pictures, which is going to be telling you what this world was. I mean, and I think that's a bit of a tragedy. I mean, so I think that's a problem. I mean, apart from it, I mean, technology is meant to kind of shake things up. It has shaken things up before. Unfortunately, it's shaking it up now. What can we do?
Yeah, it's disrupting in different ways. It's I mean, it's a technology is it has yin and yang.
Yeah.
Okay. To conclude, I was reading this book. It's not like a read one book, one time read book. You just keep going over and over again. It says, "What is art?" and 100 other questions, and it had a beautiful question in that. So the author, I don't remember the author, but maybe I'll connect in the show notes. The author, on the left hand side, he asks one question and he gives a short answer and a long answer. So on the left hand side, he has asked, why do everybody has opinion on art? And the right hand side, who decides your art is good? Who decides your art is good?
Right.
And on the right hand side, the short answer is, I think, Glenn Lowry. And he says, the long answer is, he's the director at MoMA. So that's it. It's very subjective. You can't really put a finger and then this is an authority to say that this is good or not.
Right. Yeah. But of course, I mean, there is something to be said about an educated and an informed opinion, right? I mean, so otherwise I could say, oh, my brother is the greatest photographer there ever is, I don't think it makes any sense. Because,
even if you are the curator of MoMA.
I mean, then maybe I might be willing to pay a little attention, but I mean, not otherwise, right? Not beyond that.
Yeah.
So I think that's all that it means. I mean, have you caught my attention for a while?
Yeah.
So.
Cool. I think this is a good note to end this.
Thank you.
It was wonderful talking to you and a lot of learnings, a lot of insights.
You. I may have rambled on a bit.
No, it's completely.
But I'm sure you're used to that.
No, definitely not. And people have to follow you. What's the best way?
Are
you looking
Facebook,
for interns? Are you looking for anything?
I was looking for somebody to help me on a project, to complete a project rather, but I think I may be right now not looking for somebody, but otherwise look me up on Facebook, look me up on Instagram. I refuse to be on Twitter. So Facebook, Instagram, that's the best way to be in touch.
Cool.
Yeah, and from there, I mean, we can be on touch on email, phone, whatever. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. So
all right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on Audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
At Speedway, we've always been here to get you what you need when you need it. We're committed to keeping our stores open, clean, and safe, so you can stay fueled and refreshed all summer long. We've got cold drinks for hot days and frozen drinks for even hotter ones, plus energy boosts, quick bites, and pick-me-ups. We're always on your way, and we're always here for you. So no matter what you need, when you stop by, we'll be ready. Now buy any 3 cooler beverages and get 500 bonus Speedy Rewards points.